Okay, now, so let's start again. After a few technical problems, we can proceed. Please, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Dior Sadi Ali. I came from Kurdistan, Iraq. So I'm very proud to be here at this year. So I am Dior Sadi Ali, and I'm 22 years old. And my nationality is Iraqi, and I have a more than 11 years experience of the offensive and defensive. And now I'm working in Dubai in the private sector as a red blue tumor. So my recent talk is in an Arab cybersecurity conference in Egypt, also Suleimania cybersecurity conference about the art of finding information from anyone and in anywhere. It's awesome. And also I have nearly 10 local TV interview, and I have my 2 books about the cyber forensic and cyber threat and social media. Also presenting a dozen of presentation in Kurdistan, Iraq, like a British international school. So our agenda today is understanding the firmware, also firmware in cyber attack, and understanding the firmware forensic cycle. Also, we are discussing about some tools that can be used into a firmware forensic. So then we will start firmware forensic in action. That's maybe 28 PDF pages that we are starting analyze the malware from 0 to hero. And based on the detail we are talking about from here, you will know and you will notice how to analyze the firmware from 0 to hero without any paid tool also. So let's start our first agenda. It's understanding the firmware forensic. So as we know, forensic is a type of the software is directly embedded into devices. It provides a low-level control into device, and it's essential to hardware is operate. So firmware exists in everywhere in our computer devices and smartwatch, also the washing machines, and also maybe some smart car also. Actually, the firmware on the computer and laptop is a BIOS, UEFI, or it's a firmware that initializes and tests the system hardware component. As we know, the first time we touch the power button of our computer, there are some processes that start beginning. The first one, the electric, will be go to a motherboard to start operating, and then the reset state that clear all the register value on the devices like general purpose registers, like segments, like flags, like special general registers or stack registers. And we have the mobile device smartphone also. It's contain the firmware to managing the processor, camera, sensor. It also handles the low-level system. And in smartwatch also, firmware control the device displays and sensor and connectivity feature. Because we have to know the firmware is like a soul for the device. The device without firmware is don't have a soul if you are converted to a normal life. And also we have a networking equipment like a router and switch, and it's controlling the traffic and the functionality of the devices. Also, we have different types of the firmware, like a low level and high level. Also, we have a subsystem. The firmware is usually in a low level system, is stored in a non-volatile memory. That's a room. It cannot be edited, updated, or be written. And sometimes in an OTP, one-time programmable memory, and it cannot get the update. It's like a static environment. Static environment is especially designed in the operation system on a computer device. It's designed to not be updated. So if the static environment is being vulnerable, so there are no updates for that. Also, we have the high-level firmware. In this case, we have the complex instruction. Also, we have updates. So our cases, the submarine case, is actually discuss about the firmware injection. So our analysis in the second stage also. So we have the subsystem. It's a semi-independent. That's they have an independent permission, and it will be stored in a central process unit, CPU, and also LCD and flash and chips also. So why the firmware is targeted by threat actors? That's a great question we have to ask ourselves to get the right answer. When the attacker injects your firmware by a malware, he is on the ring 0. That means he is on the kernel mode. And while the attacker gain access and get the privilege of the kernel mode, no EDR, no XDR, no antivirus solution cannot remove them. Because it's have at the kernel level, also it can manipulate the kernel object. So the attackers will also try to get the most privilege level on the system. Like maybe you have the experience with privilege escalation that attacker relying on to make what we want. For example, it's easy. While the attacker will gain access on the computer and launching the net users, launching the ipconfig command, because it's actually will run on a user mode. But to do add the administrator, add the user, change the password, it should be in a administration level. That's a root access. That's in a Linux it's called UID 0. And also it can be used for supply chain attack. While we have 2,000 devices are infected with this malware, the fake update malware. So also the firmware is a limited visibility detection. You don't know you are infected being a malware, like like a Trojan, like a ransomware, like a info stealer. It's visible. Maybe after 1 week, the antivirus vendor will get the hash, analyze it, upload it into database, and send an update into your antivirus product based online, and the virus will be removed. But in firmware section, there are no possibility to be removed unless you will again start to reflashing your firmware and your BIOS. Also, lack of the monitoring tool. There are some tools that can be used for analyzing the firmware and monitoring. We have tools for monitoring network like a Wireshark, and we have a network miner, and we have a tool for vulnerability assessment and finding the vulnerability from websites like Aquintix, Barbsuit, Nessus, and Smart Scanner until the end. But for firmware, we don't have to. Also, the bypasses a security mechanism. Mostly the firmware, if it will be infected by a malware, it bypasses security mechanism easily. So there are less chance to be detectable and be visible. Because in reality, the structure of the freedom kit or boot kit, it's invisible. You cannot at least even suspect on your device that your device has been infected. Also, as we mentioned, the antivirus vendor is not detected them. So the firmware vendors, the product vendors, like IoT's vendors, they are feeding the malware author by themselves. The fault is not in an attacker hand. That's depend on two stuffs. The first one, the customer require one IoT devices for one times. It will never change it and use another devices. So this device will be get expired, and attacker will maybe download the firmware and analyze it and finding the exploit or writing the exploit scripting by a Python, Perl, Ruby, and other language, even Bash script. So there are less updates for the firmware. So still we have some routers that's completely vulnerable. If you look at Shodan or Sensis or ZoomEye, we can find dozens of the router on a critical location available online, and everyone can access. Even a little bit tricky, you can find the smart watches, you can find the medical equipment, you can access on industrial control system ICS SCADA, because there are no updates and there are no awareness from the users and security team from the industry or from the hospital or from the specific companies. Also, nowadays, it's sad to say, the IoT devices is everywhere. It's available from our house CCTVs, and it's available from hospitals, the medical equipment. It's available from industrial control system. So maybe that question will become to mention, okay, the industrial control system industry, the network has been air-gapped. That's a right question, but the answer is different, and will debunk this thought about the air-gapped network is safe. Actually, the air-gapped network connected into the company server network, and the company server network is connected into the public internet. So you are always vulnerable. Like a Mikko Hipponen mentioned, if it's smart, it's a vulnerable book. Everything is vulnerable, and we can say everything is hackable. Because the more technology will come, we are more vulnerable. And that's a true fact. And the mistake is from our side, because maybe we don't have the awareness. Imagine when your CEO email has been compromised, and the attacker pretend as your CEO and send you the malicious document to open, like a PDF or Excel file, and because maybe you don't have awareness, you'll be infected. And also in some cases, click the enabled macro as a fault. So there are common vulnerability in a firmware, like an unsigned firmware. That's a type of the updates of firmware is not assigned. Or maybe attacker will get the fake certificate to bypass a security mechanism. Because nowadays the malware author doing their best and hard work to bypass a security mechanism, like injecting a fake certificate or stolen certificate. Because when you register or add the certificate on your malware, automatically the Microsoft realize, or antivirus vendor realize, it came from the legitimate source. But actually it's not. Also, insecure firmware update. So some updates firmware require without authentication. In this case, maybe the attacker will hijack the updating service of the company, like we have some cases in Avast and in Microsoft. The attacker will inject the malware into update service mechanism in Microsoft and in an Avast company, and the users feel, oh, we gotta update this. Our security issue will be fixed, and my computer will be more faster than before. But suddenly, it will be infected by malware because he doesn't know the service update has been hijacked by attackers. Also, hard-coded credential. Maybe you don't believe that, but some CCTV camera in Iraq doesn't require the password. Just enter the admin username, presses enter, you'll log in. So it's what? It's awareness. We have to change the hard-coded password. So the mistake is not only from the as a user. Sometimes it's from the attackers. There are story that some friends that calling me, he's installing the Wi-Fi cracker on their Android device, and suddenly they will infected by Arab lockers. That's a ransomware that lock your devices, and the attacker will put the base 64 encryption method. So it's easily to decode it, but it's not in all cases. Nowadays, the attacker doesn't use a base 64 and XOR. They use the custom mathematical encryption method to bypass a security mechanism. Because nowadays, we have more security product, or more company will develop their own tools, and that's make a huge headache for attackers, because there are some companies will buy a private company that specializes into cyber attack, get their ideology, get their scripting, and write the rules like a Sigma, like a Yara, to detect the malware in the same case and the same technique. Also, weak or outdated encryption. So mostly in the past, we have a weak encryption method. But nowadays, we have RSA, AES, and RC80 military encryption method. But in same firmware cases and IoT devices, it's actually use the weak encryption method. We have the case and the Cisco router devices has been compromised by attacker by a weak authentication and weak encryption method. Also, lack of regular firmware update. As we mentioned earlier, the vendors doesn't release the update monthly, yearly. It's only the same. If the update stay the same update it'd be vulnerable, and the attacker will download it, look at the source code using IDA Pro, using Ghidra or Binary Ninja or any other tools that use it for reverse engineering and find the exploiters. And nowadays we have a ChatGPTs. We can write exploits very easy. So we have a common firmware cyber attack, like a LoJax malware that's a lack of UEFI firmware protection. And we have a Triton attack that's an attack on one of the chemical industrial control system in Saudi Arabia that's a cause insecure firmware. So we have a Cisco router where weak firmware authentication on network devices. And also firmware in cyber attack overview. So common firmware are targeted in cyber attack is actually IoT devices, router network equipment is like we mentioned in Cisco. Also UEFI BIOS, there are new vulnerability in BIOS, attacker will find it and exploit it, and sometimes selling it as a 0-day because maybe the nation state threat actors or cyber criminal will interest them to have a 0 days to deploy their attack and stay for a long time, because nowadays staying for 1 month it's a very long time. In the past, if you are using some tools like NGROD, Dark Comment, or AdMax Keylogger, we can stay for years or for months. But nowadays it's difficult because there are more security products, there are more updates, and there are more hashes and cyber communities, malware analyst communities that share their feeds. Also, embedded system, ICS, also it's vulnerable to a cyber attack. So we have 3 different types of the firmware cyber attack. One of them is a firmware injection that we have in this case. That's a firmware injection attacker will upload a malicious updates after compromising the company website, and the 2,449 people will download the sample and install it on the device, and all of them have been infected. Also, we have a man-in-the-middle attack. That attacker will intercept the network traffic to steal data or eavesdropping. So we have a breaking device, a type of denial of service attack, DDoS attack. Also, we have a DOS attack, we have a DDoS attack, we have a TDoS attack. But the TDoS attack is mostly for telecommunication. So we have a Buffalo cases that product link station LS200. The attacker will find exploits that known as a CVE 2023-51073. There's made attacker to execute the remote execution code RCE and do whatever they want. So understanding the firmware forensic. So what's the forensic actually? The forensic basically is examining the computer and the devices and the files inside human body. That's called digital forensic. So digital forensic nowadays play a critical role in the cyberspace because when the cyber attack will occur, the first responder, the incident handler, should come to process data and analyze the cases. So the cyber investigator, cyber forensic investigator come to analyze the threats and extract the image and using the FTK autopsy, could be oxygen, could be Celebrite to specific devices. Okay, so common forensic technique, we have a different technique in red teaming, blue team. So maybe we have a different technique to bypass antivirus vendors in a red team section, and for blue team to defense we have a different techniques. So the technique is the key. The technique is the key because the cyber attack is always the same, but the method of the attack the form of the attack, the way of the attack will be changed. So firmware extraction and static analysis by using tools like a Detect Easy, IDA Pro, Ghidra. Also tools like DD, Beanwalk. So we can use a dynamic analysis or run it on sandbox, or using the tool like a FAT. It's for a script it's available on GitHub that you can use it for emulating the firmware. So firmware validation, it's one of the way that we can use to indicate it's a malicious or not. Also hash analysis, but hash analysis is not mostly accurate, because if you open the firmware file update into hex editor or just add one null byte, everything will be other change. So we have some tools that are related to a firmware forensic. The firmware forensic is actually firmware forensic tool is some tools that we can use to deploying our investigation, like IDA Pro, Radar, DD, and another tools that we discuss in the next slides. So we have a Beanwalk that's used for extracts and analyze the firmware images. We have a DD, it's extract a raw data from firmware or storage. Maybe you cannot believe it, I have found the authentication bypasses by using DD and dumping the file all in one routers in Kyrgyzstan. So I have participated in a hackathon in Suleimania, but they don't accept that. So just writing Python code, basically the code that I have analyzed it and extracting the raw based on DD, and everything will be done. So we have a Freedom Dyna, it's an automated Linux firmware analysis and emulation that you can use for analyzing the firmware. Also we have a IDA Pro, it's a disassembler. Basically the IDA free doesn't accept Mozilla files. You have to have a IDA Pro, and now IDA Pro is everywhere if you can some smarts to how to Google it. We have a firmware analyze toolkit FAT, it's extract and inspect firmware. It's based on Linux. And we have a bug proof, it's an online version. It's a very, very effective one. It can also find 0 days and show you the line of the code that's vulnerable. Also, we have a firmware.re. I have used this one, but it's a little bit slow and old. So we go to in action. Okay. It's my research. So guys, it's a Sovereign case study. Sovereign Technology is a company known for producing a various computer hardware, like SSD devices and USB hubs. So in August 2023, the malicious updates of the device HB BUP7 has been added. And if you look the corner, you know that 2,449 people are download this update. So that's mean we can indicate those are infected, all of them, because they need update. I have read some articles before start the research and analyze that some people have an issue regarding their devices. So there are some evidences like that. So the firmware updates does fix the problem. So they mention we are downloaded, but it's not to fix the issue. And here, also from the Tom's Hardware website, say I have a HB BOP7. I have downloaded the update, but the issue has been fixed because it's a malware. And that's a HB BOP7 protected by subrent. Okay, guys. So we are starting by doing the reconnaissance. We have to know where the attack came from. Nowadays, it's very difficult to indicate where the attack came from. Let's make an example. Let's say the Russian attackers will compromise the Indian government website. And before the Russian attacker will leave their place, they change the language into Indian language, the language setting. When the first responder will come, it say, okay, this attack happened by Indian. But it's not true. It's only change the attribution, the art of misdirection. Okay, so we have the 2bin file. That's actually the update is, and what guideline that teach you how to hack yourself. okay? And we have one folders that contain burning steps. So actually, I have using the EXIF tool to analyze the metadata. We have the WPS. We have the WPS Office file. Actually, WPS is the Office program that used in China. Okay, but we cannot say by 100% the attack came from China. So the language can be very easily changed, and the timestamp also can be changed, and the event logs can be very easily overwritten. So that's a way that the attacker teach you how to hack yourself, by how to burning your devices. So that's a way that tell you first time open the file. The second one, click the extract the zip file and open the folder. Open this rgs.exe, and that's other steps to connect your hardware device on the software via USB and load the firmwares and click start and being infected by malware. So I start to doing a more OSINT to understand the language what's meaning, because I can't read or understand the Chinese. It's mentioned burning step. Burning step. So I have used the Kappa. Kappa is a tool that developed by FireEye that used it for understanding the malware capability. So I have started search all of the IPTs groups that based on China that use the same technique and technique procedure. So we have a Lazarus from the North Korea. So we have a Zeus Panda, and we have a Maze, and I believe the Maze is a Russian, not Chinese, because we have the Operation Maze from the past. And we have a Zeus Panda. Zeus Panda is also a Chinese. Just for name convention, the bear is a Russia, the kitten is a Iran, and the turtle is Turkey, and the leopard is a Pakistan, and the buffalo is a Vietnam, and also the China is a panda, and the Pegasus horse is a Camilla, it's a North Korea. So North Korea have a Lazarus, have the Kimsuki, yeah, they have those groups also. So we have a small indicator that came from China, but it's not enough. So let's get the hash. It's basically the PowerShell command get file hash, then your file and algorithm, which type of hash you want to get. So we start to extract the hash and upload the RGS file into hex editor. So we see that's a MZP file. So it's not executable file. It's a mountable zip file. Mountable zip file, like an ISO, you'll mount it. It's not MZ file. So it contains a .code section that contain a main code, the data or add data that contain a function. If you upload this file into IDA Pro, you see the iData. iData is the same as a function of the data here. And so we have the resource section. So also that's a PE, that's a portable executable file. And the magic header is a MZ. So I have used the detect easy and upload the RGS file. I saw the 3 resource section. That's pretty unusual that to have a 3 resource sections. So it's for PEI 386, that's for pseudo, that's for 32-bit. Okay. So 2 of them are exe, and 1 of them it's a zip file, and 2 of them are packet, and 1 of them is not packet. It's not packet because it's a legitimate one, and that's a malware. So I have uploaded the file into IDA Pro because the attacker will use the resource section to drop the final stage. I have to go to the IDA Pro and import section to find the specific Windows APIs that related to loading the resource section. So I have found load resource to loading the resource section. I have found the find resource that using for a resource section. Again, the second resource section, because we have a 2 executable file, 2 PE file. That's why the attacker used 2 load resources. So the 3 resources that's used for allocate memory to find a space into the devices and execute the malware. Also, we use the resource hacker from here. That's a resource section, RC data. That's contain the first exe file. That's a clean one. And the MZP. That's a malware, zip mountable. Also, we have something is very, very interesting. That's LXM file. So why I have the Excel file inside an executable file? Why I have? It's unusual that have the Excel file inside an executable file. So the zip file magic header is a PK. Just remember, the APK file, the document file, it's a PK magic header. So I have back to IDA Pro. I have noticed it by pressing Shift plus and F12 to searching from the screen. I have found the Excel application. Again, there are XLSM extension that stands for Excel file, but it's not a normal Excel file. It's an auto-enabled macro. You don't have to click the enable macro to be infected. You'll automatically infect it just by double-clicking on it. Also, guys, again, I searched inside the PK file. I have found the structure like this. Okay, let's go. It's not enough. So I have dumped it, this empty file, the first exe, and the second one also. And now I have the dump.ex and dump1.ex. So the dump1.ex, it's a clean one. Do you remember I have mentioned it? One of the executable file is not packet because it's just a clean one. And the second one, it's a malware. So again, back to Kappa. To know what the capabilities have. Look here, command and scripting interpreter. That's mean maybe the PowerShell code, maybe the VBA macro has been used in this case. So let's dump it. As I mentioned it, the Excel file is a PK, and that's on. So that came from Microsoft Excel, and it's docs, okay? And let us use the OLE VBA. That Excel file will download the final stage, cache1.exe, from Dropbox. That's an indicator of compromise. So the attacker used wscript.shell. That's a command code in VBA to execute the file system command inside a VBA macro document. So again, we have the macro. If you remember, I told you that XLSM file, it's an auto-enabled macro. So now we have the macro. So upload the Excel file into VirusTotal. Again, we got the indicate this file is a malware. Again, I have used the VirusTotal at the final stage just for indicate my analysis is accurate or not. Do you remember in DataKit Easy, I have the 3 file, 2 exe file, and 1 zip file? That's a 3. Same result. So maybe I'm better than VirusTotal. Also, do you remember from the indicator of compromise, we have a cache.exe. Again, it's the same. In addition, we have emulate the data. Imagine the attacker deploying the specific technique. When you open the rhc.exe file, you see the GUI. But the GUI, it's not the first application will run. The first application in background will be run after clicking the file. It will be Excel. And it will, what's the file name? .xlsm, while we have the in resource section. And the attacker will download the final stage on Dropbox, as I showed you from the indicator of compromise. Then the attacker will use the app data as dropper and download one, cache.exe, and create the process, done, until final drop location is a system, DEEPSEC, and users, and app data, and the temp. So also, that's a cache1.exe. Okay, guys, so I have dumped the executable file. That Excel file will be dropped. I found the SMTP email service, and finally extract the email and passwords that attacker will use for stealing the data and sending the data. Also, the name of Redline is very unusual for me, because we have the malware. It's a Redline, that's an info stealer, but the Redline is a Japanese enemy. That we can say maybe the attacks came by Japanese threat actors, but they printed it into the Chinese. Who knows? And also, that's a table of communication channel. We have SMTP services and their email and their password. Again, their email and their password, but suddenly I'm not able to get the last one. So the persistent mechanism, the attacker will use registry run and run keys, run and run once, yes, and start a folder to maintain a persistence. Because when attacker will use the run registry folder as a persistence, when your computer will be turned on, and when you restart your computer, the malware start running again. And guys, the dynamic analyze also, we are using the Anirun, Hybrid Analysis, Joy Sandbox, and Threat App Zone, that's a Turkish one, and the Kuka Sandbox. Oh, that's a picture of it. Also, we have some indication from the threat zone, like a registry, like a process that we mentioned from a previous picture. And also, the any.run graph, it's the same my technical analyze. The file.exe, the cache, and done. And remember, I say the attacker will maintain the persistence via the temp file. It's the same. So maybe the any.run should hire me to work. Okay, and finally, I have wrote a YARA rule to be detectable to antivirus vendors, and the YARA rule will be completely work. And thanks for listening. I hope to be enjoyable. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So thank you very much. This was a very nice talk indeed. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Hello. I have a few questions regarding at the final you said that it's Redline Info Stealer.
Yeah, Redline is an info stealer also.
So that was the malware that you investigate?
No, no, it's a different malware. It's a different malware, but attacker will use the deep Redline name to pretending themselves, because actually the Redline is the Japanese enemy, as I mentioned it. It's not info stealer malware.
Okay, okay. And what was the capability of this malware?
It's a keylogging and system information discovery. Maybe the attacker want to get more information during reconnaissance on the specific company to maintain a persistence and maybe doing the espionage. Who knows?
Okay, and what is, this is the last question, what is the connection with the embedded system?
With what? With this malware?
Yeah, what is...
So when you download the software that use it for reflashing your firmware, automatically your firmware, also your devices will be infected by malware.
So the connection is that this is an update for a firmware?
Yeah, but it's a malicious update. It's not a real update. The attacker will compromise the website and upload the fake updates, and it's completely malicious. Will infect your hardware device and your computer also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I have a short question for you.
Yeah, thank you.
I was wondering, what do you think about kernel level anti-cheat?
It's
systems?
for gaming.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not a game cheating fan. Yeah, I'm not cracking the game as I play with the game. Yes.
No, do you think like it poses a risk?
So
if
actually,
companies implement this?
when a attacker will gain access on a kernel level ring 0, it have everything that they want to do, because they have a privilege to do anything. They can manipulate the kernel like a rootkit do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're 5 minutes ahead of schedule, so we can
Yeah.
get into the break.
Maybe
5 minutes early and have a coffee, and
Yeah.
we'll see each other again at 4 o'clock.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you again for the
thank you.
nice talk.